Germany just went out of the 2026 World Cup to Paraguay on penalties, in a game that they controlled. A third straight tournament that's ended in a disappointment, and the manager Julian Nagelsmann was sacked 4 days later. Now up steps Jürgen Klopp. Fresh off a head of soccer role at Red Bull, he comes in with fresh ideas and impetus. But can Klopp take Germany back to the top of the world? So, here's the thing about Jürgen Klopp. He gets lost every time somebody talks about gegenpressing, when the tactics and the pressing was never really the point. Looking at his time at Dortmund, none of these three players, Reus, Götze and Lewandowski, were the finished article when he built the team around them. Götze was a teenager, Reus was a squad player at Gladbach a year earlier, but the system was built around these three stars. And it was the same story at Liverpool. Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't a generational right-back when Klopp arrived. Klopp built the role and the job description that turned an academic kid right-back into one of the best in the world. So that's the pattern, right? Jürgen Klopp doesn't inherit talent. He manufactures conviction and gives the young players a job that's simple enough to execute at full speed and full belief immediately. And now, at Germany, he's got the biggest version of the job that he's ever had. But Germany already has the players. What they never had is the system and a manager that's capable of bringing the best out of them. So, looking back, let's look at what Julian Nagelsmann did with this generation. And as I mentioned before, round of 32, with a must-win game against Paraguay and Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz, the two best attacking talents that Germany has produced this decade, they both started on the bench. Nagelsmann never really fully solved how to start Wirtz and Musiala together. And these two players who want the same pocket of space, the same disorienting drift between the lines, that was really never solved in Nagelsmann's time in Germany. However, with Jürgen Klopp, this is almost the exact same puzzle he solved in 2012 with Reus and Götze, two elite technical players overlapping zones that defenses don't really know who and when to follow. Klopp's answer back then wasn't to pick one, it was to build a rotation so fluid that opponents couldn't assign markers at all. Now, the part of this rebuild that's less exciting to talk about, but matters just as much, is the midfield. Germany's midfield pivot got physically overrun against Paraguay. They lost in the second balls, duels, direct running, which is the exact profile that Klopp's own football was built to punish, not to suffer against. And Klopp has fixed this problem before at Liverpool. Liverpool bought Fabinho, and even though their title-winning midfield wasn't its most gifted, it was definitely disciplined and hard-working. Fabinho did one job and did it exceptionally well, and let everyone in front of him play with the freedom. Obviously, Germany doesn't have a Fabinho type of mold right now, which means that one of the first calls that Jürgen Klopp makes is to really find a solution for that midfield. And it might not be the most glamorous midfield, but it can try to find a physically dominant solution so that Wirtz and Musiala can play with freedom in front of him. So, how will he actually play? Well, Klopp said it himself in his press conference. Here, he mentioned that he made a point that Germany isn't trying to out-technical like Spain or out-talent like France, that Germany doesn't have an Mbappe or Dembele level individual talent sitting in the squad right now, and he'll probably do some things like the Spanish or some things like the French or the English, but the German football will be its own way. And looking at Klopp's last stint at Liverpool, for example, he played a triangle-based system with these three interchanges on either flank or through the middle, and I suspect he would love to develop this kind of cohesion with the team going forward. But as mentioned before, the plan isn't to imitate the teams that are currently better, it's to build something that no other national team is doing at this level, which is a full international side playing club intensity counter-pressing and drilled around principles that are simple enough to install in a handful of days in a month. Which is why the next 6 weeks will matter really most than anything else in this rebuild. A Nations League tie away at Netherlands on September 24th is a competitive game. Home to Serbia a week later is going to be a big test, which they play almost identical like Paraguay did, direct, physical, and second ball hungry. All this talk about formations, the press conference soundbites, the debate about the backline's pace and ability, but what Jürgen Klopp took isn't a tactics job, it's a launch sequence for a generation of players that Germany has been sitting on, and yet mismanaging for 3 straight tournaments. And we'll see how far he'll end up taking this German team. That's all for the breakdown. I'm the Third Runner. Like and subscribe for more Hidden Pieces breakdowns.